to just jump straight into what I want to share with you guys today. So a bit about myself. I hail from South India, and after I moved to Singapore with my parents, we always go back to visit my grandparents who stay in India every year. So whenever we stay with them, I always notice one thing. My grandmother, she wakes up at 4 a.m. in the morning every day, and then she goes out of the house for like an hour, and then she comes back, and she's always very happy. So I always thought to myself, why is she so happy? Like, what does she do in that 1 hour that makes her so happy? And so after a bit of digging, I realized that it was something that she did in the morning. It's called Kolam. And basically, what my grandmother does is she goes out of the house and she clears out the front of the house and she draws this huge design on the floor, like you can see in the pictures here. So my grandmother taught my mom when she was younger how to draw kolam, and my mom taught me when I was about 8 to 9 years old. And when I first tried out kolam, it was extremely frustrating because I couldn't get the design right. It was like a huge bunch of lines all over the place. It didn't look good at all. But I think with time now I'm a bit better than I was at 8 and 9 years old. So I thought to myself, what is kolam? What's the significance of kolam in society today? So looking at the origin of kolam, right? It originated around the Aryan period, circa 1500 BCE in India. And basically in the Indian society back then, it was a very patriarchal society where the males were more dominant in society than the females. So the place of a woman was in the house. And so the responsibility of the house was solely the women's. And so to clean the house, keep it beautiful looking, to make it look presentable was solely the women's responsibility. And kolam originated from here. So even today, even when the role of women has evolved from being a domestic person to working, and they're more free to do things that they want to do now, the role of kolam is still the same in their lives. And so today I want to share with you guys the significance of kolam in society. Let's look at kolam at the more superficial level. It's a form of an art, so it involves expression, drawing, and connecting shapes and dots all over the place to form a design. So if you look at Indian festivals, let's say we take a very well-known festival like Diwali. I'm sure many of you might have heard of Diwali. So in festivals like that, in Diwali, they use images of oil lamps, which is called diyas, and they use it and incorporate it into the kolams. In like less well-known festivals, like in Kerala, part of India, they celebrate a festival called Onam, which is to welcome spring, basically. And what they do is, in the kolam, without using rice flour or colored powder, they use solely flowers to create the entire kolam, as you can see from the bottom picture, the circular one. And columns don't usually have to be structured. They don't have to have a flow to it. It can be a free flow design. So instead of following a circular shape or a square shape, it can just take any free form, like the peacock column, and then there's another column at the bottom of the screen. It can just be free flow. So basically the idea behind it as an art form is that just free expression. You do what you want, get the creativity out. That's the art form perspective of column. But moving on, right? I did more research. I was like, okay, it just can't be an art form. There has to be more to it. You can't just say kolam is a drawing and stop there. So when I did a bit more research, I found out that kolam was a source of math. And if you look at it, kolam is actually ethnomath, which is basically combining culture and mathematics together. And it explores fundamental mathematical concepts like symmetry, geometry, tessellation, and fractals. And in today's world, mathematicians actually use kolam as a way to explore higher math concepts like fractals and the knot theory. And fractals, right, in today's world is very useful. It's a significant part of technological advancements, where it's used to manage complex systems and manage industrial supply chains. And in many ways, the fractal systems intuitively comprehend objects in the same way that human beings do. However, unlike human beings, they're also powered by the recursive algorithm, and they're also infinitely repeating and continually searching for connections between the elements. This makes the fractal system both smart and dynamic, and humans are able to use fractals for such advancements. So in that sense, kolam is very beneficial because you learn the fundamental concept through drawing out this design. And also, if you look at it, you can look at the Fibonacci sequence as well. So if you look at the picture above, it starts off as 1, and then to 2, and then to 4, which follows the sequence of the Fibonacci sequence. And also, if you look at arithmetic progressions in this diagram here, it follows many algorithms, but this is just one way that I'm showing you. So there are 4, which progresses to 12, and then finally you get 24. So it follows a progression, and ultimately you get a really beautiful design, which I'm still trying to master. And also, apart from the mathematical aspect, there's also the scientific aspect of kolam. If you look at kolam, like the ones that I'm showing to you on the screen right now, these ones, you would notice that there are two colors that are being used, red and white. In the Indian culture, the red symbolizes the females and the white symbolizes the males. So in a sense, it represents the union of man and woman. And also, most of these types of columns are found in, let's say, weddings and in temples. So in that symbolic meaning, it refers to the union of man and woman. And also, in Kolam, there is the concept of cymatics, which is a scientific concept of exploring the relationship between harmonic vibrations in sound domains and the geometric surroundings, and corresponding them with the visual modes. And it's actually proven by scientists that columns, the shapes and colors in a column, activate neural circuitry and emotions positively, which explains why when my grandmother comes back from that 1 hour of column drawing, she's very happy and nothing the whole day can spoil her mood. In addition to that, right, it also contributes to blueprint memory in children. When a child, especially a child, so when a child wants to draw a column, they have to go through the entire thought process of, okay, should I do this design? Should I put this shape here? Or should I join this line to this line? They have to go through that thought process. And they have to register that image in their mind. And the dual coding theory explains how this visual image is received and to be coded by a dual coding system, which is your verbal and your visual system. And hence, for children, it improves their memory and it definitely aids in brain development. And this will help them out in the long run. And now coming to the more philosophical and cultural aspect of Kolam. So in the Indian culture, the idea of karma is very strongly believed in. That is, do good in the world and good comes back to you. So how this is incorporated into Kolam is that the traditional way of applying the kolam on the ground is basically using rice flour or rice flour paste. And the concept behind this is that by using these rice flour and rice flour paste, it's actually a source of food for smaller creatures like ants or mice or birds. And so living in a very environmentally conscious surrounding as per the Indian philosophy. And also, kolam is meant to be more than just a decorative art piece. And it's a very good representation of how life can be. So if you look at the columns here, they are very complex and very intricate. And similarly, it mirrors how life is that intricate, how we will face challenges that sometimes we really cannot solve. Personally, for me, when I first started out drawing kolam, like I mentioned before, it was just a mess. It was a whole mess. I couldn't get the design right, and I was so frustrated with myself. Like, why can't it be as good as my mom's? Why can't it be as good as my grandmother's? But as I kept practicing, and as I kept moving on to more complex designs, it kind of created this resilient characteristic within me, because once I tried drawing the kolam design and I got stuck somewhere, I would tell myself, you know what, it's okay, just move on. Find another way where you can manipulate the design, make it look better. So I think that same resilient characteristic is something that we can apply into our lives by drawing kolam, by creating this characteristic when we draw kolam. Looking back at the women back then, right, in India, they weren't running track, they weren't playing basketball, so they had no form of exercise, they had no form of keeping healthy. So kolam was actually a way for them to keep healthy and to have an active lifestyle. Because the traditional position, as you can see from the pictures, is you have to really bend, squat, or stretch your arms and legs and your torso and your back. So they were stretching all their muscles in their joints. So it was a form of exercise for them. And also, before you apply the kolam on the ground, you have to clean the whole floor. And let me tell you, houses in India, like the front porch, is huge. So you have to really clean every inch of the front porch, and then you have to draw the kolam. So the whole process is physically strenuous, and it was definitely a form of exercise for them back then. So, you know, there's so many benefits to kolam, right? So many significances, how it can help us in our daily lives. But what's the point of having all these significances if we don't apply it to our lives? So we are the youth of today, right? So we are the ones who are the torchbearers for the next generation. This is actually a kolam called the Hridaya Kamalam. The concept behind it is that you start from one central dot, and you have five rows of dots in all the different directions. And how you start the design is basically you start from the first dot of the first row, connected to the third dot of the second row, and then from the third dot you move to the fifth dot of the third row, to the second of the fourth row, and then to the fourth of the fifth row. And you keep going in that pattern, and ultimately you'll end up with a design that looks like this. So this is actually a very good representation of how we as youth should be. We should have a center, a strong anchored center, and this can only come through our culture, our tradition, which is an indigenous knowledge system. And how once we have that sound anchored center, we are able to flourish and radiate and grow as productive members of our society. And when we appreciate our own culture, when we learn from our own culture, we develop a sound moral value system. And once we develop that, we are able to appreciate and understand other cultures as well. And this creates a more open-mindedness amongst us, and we're able to develop better as a more cohesive society. So looking back, we take the traditions and the cultures and the indigenous knowledge systems that we have and extract their benefits. And moving forward, we take these benefits, manipulate it to our society to develop a more harmonious and peaceful society. So thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.